Welcome to the Family Law Frontline.
Welcome back to the Family Law Frontline with Fedor Kozlov. Fedor is the founding partner and chief litigator at the law office of Fedor Kozlov, PC. With over a decade of experience in Illinois family law, he handles high-stakes cases involving custody, property division, domestic violence, and complex divorces. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about prenuptial and postnuptial agreements. Fedor will explain how they work in Illinois, what they can protect, and what mistakes can make them fall apart later. Fedor, welcome back.
Hi, Kevin. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good.
So when people reach out about a prenuptial agreement, what usually motivates them?
Money, protecting assets, money, lack of trust. I probably should say, to the other partner. Maybe not very good past experience when people went through divorce, lost a lot of money, things like that. I think, but a combination of lack of trust and maybe again experience would be the key issues for people. Also, if a person who gets into a relationship and then decides to get married, if they have kids already from previous relationship, and they want to protect their children, the future of their children, sometimes that has to come into play with the prenup. I'll tell you this: the people view prenups differently.
Mm-hmm.
I had clients that would come in, and it's absolutely normal for them, this sort of business activity. They view it as a business, nothing strange, and they want to put on the paper whatever she has, whatever he has, in order to make sure that that's not going to change in case divorce doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry, divorce in case of marriage doesn't go south. But sometimes people and clients view it as breach of trust, sort of. So they are in love, but then one of them asks to sign a prenuptial agreement, and he or she might see it as well, you don't trust me. If you don't trust me, why would you marry me? But recently, prenups really not a big deal. When people get married in Illinois, you have to apply for marriage license. You have to wait a certain amount of time before you get married. And that's a good period of time when you can go over a prenuptial agreement. There are some things with the prenuptial agreement. It's a very dry subject, this prenuptial agreements. But
I don't know. It can get spicy.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But there are some rules. And then when people don't follow these rules, that might be challenged later on. So the rules are, first of all, everybody has to pay and be responsible for his or her own attorney. In other terms, it's you go and see your lawyer and you ask your lawyer to write a prenuptial agreement. Then you give this prenuptial agreement, and your client has to give it to his or her future spouse, and that person has to go and pay money for a different lawyer to review it. And then once everything is reviewed, it's like real estate closing. You gather together in one place, two lawyers, two people, notary public, and you notarize everything and you save it and you put it in your safe. Prenuptial agreements. I just had a client. He was he's been married for 26 years. He already has kids, 21, 15, and I believe 12 years old age. They're both doctors, but they had about 4 or 5 different agreements. One, of course, is a prenuptial agreement, and then 4 postnuptial agreements. So what happens is, these agreements can control your life only for a certain period of time, and it's not a bulletproof vest. I remember there was a movie, I forgot the name of the movie, it was George Clooney in there, where it says that he he's playing a divorce lawyer, and he came up with this universal prenuptial agreement. Such thing does not exist, because it controls marriage only for a short period of time in the relationship. So if you come into the marriage with property, with bank accounts, with 401ks, stuff like that, and then the other spouse comes in with nothing, and then you have kids, and then you sell the house and you buy a new house, and then you open a new account. So this all things called commingling now, and it's very difficult to figure out, who has now what. And prenuptial agreements are effective for a short period of time. They widely used when you bring a spouse from overseas, from a different country, whether it's the country of where you coming from or any other place, but you're not sure if he or she would stay with you beyond, getting green card, beyond when they get the citizenship, which usually takes about 5 years. And you want to make sure that once you get divorced, and if you remember in Illinois, everything is a reconcilable difference, so there is no more cause for the divorce. So if you caught your spouse cheating, you hurt, but it doesn't matter in the court of law, and the custody of the kids and visitations and your money will be divided in accordance with the law, and there will be no consideration as to the wrongdoings of the other spouse. Now, since I'm talking about custody and visitations, prenuptial agreements do not control it. The reason they do not control it is because you cannot enter an agreement in regards to the third party, which is your child. So that has no effect whatsoever. But the postnuptial agreement, and going back to my example of my client who is a doctor, married to a doctor for 26 years, they had difficulties during their marriage, and divorce was filed once or twice, but then they reconciled, and then after they reconciled, they canceled the divorce proceedings. They would go to a mediation or family therapy, things like that, and they would enter into postnuptial agreement. So they would pretty much put it on the paper saying that, okay, with our marriage had difficulties, and now since we overcame those, let's put on the paper what you have at this moment, what do I have at this moment, and in case we get divorced, what am I going to keep and what you going to keep. That happened several times. But again, prenuptial agreements and postnuptial agreements, it's not a bulletproof document. It's an agreement, and it'll be definitely reviewed by the court. And one of the things if you go through divorce, you would need to file is the enforcement of the terms of the prenuptial agreement. And it will be up to the court either to say this agreement is valid or this agreement is not valid, or if certain terms of this agreement valid or not valid. And again, I've seen it many, many times when the agreement gets canceled just because one of the spouses paid for both lawyers, and it's a very common mistake. I don't understand why people don't follow the advice of their lawyer and use the same credit card for to pay for services of both lawyers.
Wow, so that actually can nullify it, huh?
Yeah, by all means, and that's a no-brainer. You file a motion for summary judgment. The agreement is out. Once the agreement is out, you go back to what is the basis? What is this? What does the statute say based on your situation? Do not pay for your lawyers with one credit card. And then the other thing that happen a lot. It's very understandable why people do that. So if a person who has no money and he or she is asked now to go and hire an attorney, pay for their attorney services, so he or she would lie to their future spouse and say, "Hey, I came to the attorney. He said that's fine. I don't even need to show up at the execution of the documents." And when he or she never went to any lawyer, never sought any legal advice, and then that agreement will be nullified. Interesting is that both sides have to make sure that they both follow the procedure. So if somebody like that comes to you and says, "I just confirmed with my lawyer that everything's fine," you still need to ask for the name of the lawyer. Another thing that is interesting. I personally prefer not to be involved with the prenuptial agreements, and I'll tell you why. It's very simple. That I will. So if a friend of mine, let's say, or somebody I know, old client, something like that, even family member would come to me and say, "Hey, can you do this prenuptial agreement?" Usually say no. The reason that I say no is because once I do the prenuptial agreement, I already have a conflict of interest in the future to represent my client during the
Oh,
because I
interesting.
potentially can become a witness.
Right.
And we had a case like that when a lawyer drafted the prenuptial agreement, confirmed it with the client, everything was fine, and then down the road there was a question about procedure, what that lawyer did, and we had to call him for a deposition, and he was a witness in the case. And if you can be potential witness in the case, you cannot represent the client uh, for obvious reasons. So if you do this prenuptial agreement, it disqualifies you from representing the client in the future. And my firm, we litigate cases. 90% of our cases are litigation cases, or cases that we file with the Court of Appeals. So unless with some exceptions, we do prenuptial agreements, but mostly, if you litigation firm, we refer them to somebody else to do the prenuptial agreement, just in case if time comes and I'll have to represent the client. I don't need to know anything about this prenuptial agreement, communication between the parties that took place, or whether or not the procedure was followed. So yeah, that's for the prenuptial agreements.
Before we move on, I'm curious about something. Isn't it, I've heard before that there has to be like a certain amount of time between the prenup and the actual marriage, so it doesn't seem like someone's pressured. Is that the case in Illinois too?
Not really. The pressure and duress sort of would play some kind of role in it. So you definitely cannot ask somebody to sign prenuptial agreement on the date of your marriage. So you
Yeah.
don't bring it to church.
On the way up the aisle, hey, sign this.
Yeah, why we sitting in the limo? Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
or drinking a champagne. Yeah, so these basic rules, like when people talk about usually wills, not so much as trust. When you deal with elderly people, you always ask, well, was there duress? Was there undue influence? Were there any threats and things like that? It's the same with the prenuptial agreements. So it's like, just to finish this thought, you cannot put it, like, ask somebody to sign it immediately before the marriage, or uh, you cannot make threats like, I'm going to send you back to your country unless you do this, stuff like that. But then also, you limit it in scope for the prenuptial agreement. And then, I mean, the famous case of Anna Nicole Smith, I think the one that kind of resurfaced all these cases was the prenuptial agreements. We all know about that case when a young woman got involved with a very old gentleman, and then he died, and the kids were the ones who challenged um, the will and the prenuptial agreement that was entered. So when you write this prenuptial agreement, as I said before, you cannot say there, like, in case because I've seen it sometimes. If you file for the divorce first, I will have the custody of the children. It's not going to be a valid agreement. It's not something that the court will enforce. Not only the court will not is not going to enforce it's not going to enforce it, just because of this provision, the whole prenuptial agreement might be null and void. Also, you cannot waive child support, and I've seen it many, many times too. Again, child support is the support that people pay for a third party. You cannot waive interest of the third party, kids, even minor children, between two of you. And then the other thing, if you think about it, when you sign the prenuptial agreement, you probably don't know how many kids you will have. Even if the mother is pregnant already, she might not know how many kids she's going to have, and it's just not going to be. It's just not a legal agreement. What you do, you protect your stuff that you have, and sometimes it's redundant, and redundant in the way that we all know that if I inherit something from my mom or my father, it's going to be mine. It's not going to be my spouse's. Or if someone gives me a gift, it's mine. Doesn't matter if it's during marriage, before marriage. But sometimes people put it just to make sure that this, motorcycle, unique motorcycle, or this diamond from my grandmother is going to stay with me no matter what. Even if I sell it during the marriage, the money that I'm going to get from this diamond, that's going to be my personal money. But again, remember this, that it's life is life and things change. And if you use that money and you put it into joint bank account, and then you made purchases from that bank account, let's say you purchase clothes, food, or you purchased furniture. So it's called commingling. And once it's commingled, your spouse has the right to have that account. Or if you take that money and put it in the investment accounts, you trade, you buy stock with that money, if you don't use the proceeds from that stock for the family reasons, it's yours. But if you once it's commingled, it's commingled.
Can you talk about what postnups are, as far as like how they differ, what the biggest difference is?
It's the same thing as the prenup. Some smart attorney decided to have this postnup. But again, in my mind, you already married, and you can file a petition to enforce the postnup. The law, the statute have a control over any agreements that you have. But of course, if you put something in the postnup, it could be very much enforceable. The same rule applies.
All the same rules apply to a postnup. Okay. Interesting. Well, I thought that was very interesting. You said it was a dry subject. Because it's one of those things that's like, kind of taboo to talk about a lot of times, but it seems like as time goes on, it's getting a little more accepted.
Well, I'm sure I forgot his name, Jeffrey Bezos. What's his name?
Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, the owner of Amazon. I'm sure he had a prenup with his new wife. I think they even talked about it on some shows, how much money she's going to get if he files for divorce, and how much money she's going to get if she files for the divorce. There's a difference there, but we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. Those prenups are very, very interesting. The prenups that people usually, they want to protect their homes, houses, businesses, things of that nature. What's interesting is that people always talk about their assets, but nobody ever talks about debts. And that's something that usually put in the marital settlement agreement when people get divorced. But when you enter the marriage, you only think about protection of what you have. And randomly, people say something about the debts, because sometimes what you have can be burdened later, but what you incur in debt. And that's an interesting question that is subject to many lawsuits. Who's responsible for the debt?
I would imagine. Yeah, that's something, you're right. People don't think about that. All right, well, that's it for today's episode of the Family Law Frontline. If you're planning a marriage or already married and want to understand how a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement could protect your interests, visit lawyer-il.com to connect with Fedor Kozlov and his team. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Share the episode with someone who might need it. We very much appreciate your support. Fedor, really enjoyed chatting with you as always. Thanks so much.
Likewise, Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.